Hi everybody, I'm Daniel. Welcome to Arts Innovation, a presentation for the 2021 Self-Employment in the Arts online conference. About a year ago I started a company called Artademia and decided to put up all my former courses online in a different format. I'm a retired teacher. I taught the college level for 18 years and was traveling around teaching for many years before that at different grade levels. What we've got here is Artademia Learning Redesigned. I'm going to take you down to VizBiz, which is Earning Redesigned, and we've got 4 subject areas in between there that we'll walk through. Art Tech, which is Technology Redesigned, Archaeology, which is History Redesigned, Fanartica, which is Language Redesigned, and Psychographics, which is Thinking Redesigned. So we're going to take a closer look at some of those areas. Again, we can see that it's education, technology, history, language, business, and philosophy. What you've got here are certain areas that I have found problems when I was teaching that required specific solutions, primarily in education and the way education is treated in these different subject areas. It starts with the fact that art equals math equals music. That's kind of my mantra here, because the art and the music have exactly the same mathematical structure, which is based on the word harmony. And I'm going to walk you through that, and then we're going to see how we can apply that strategy to these other subjects. But since this is about innovation, we have to talk about that. Innovation in this particular instance is the definition of a business strategy, which I have only recently learned, over the last 3 or 4 years, I guess, because I'm not a businessman. Like many artists, I didn't learn about it until later in life, even though I've been running my own business for years. I didn't do it properly. But what I've discovered with my problems is that it's a business strategy to turn a problem into a solution. It either becomes a service or becomes a product or a series of products. So basically, I've done the research for these problems, each one of the 18. I've discovered solutions for each one. I then started a business strategy based on what's called disruption. There are several other words for the kind of business that you're going to start, so you need to look that up online just under the different types of innovation for a business. And the goal here is to sustain this and basically make a business that is sustainable because you get continuing income. So where does this innovation come from? In my case, I've written 8 books over the last 8 years. I thought I could write a book every month, but that didn't turn out to be the case. Part of the problem is I'm an artist, so I don't really think in terms of words. I think in terms of pictures. Each book has 100 pictures or more, and so there's 800 illustrations or photographs that most of which I've done myself. And so I'm going to try and go through how this happened, why I chose the subjects, and how I've turned them into products and services. We start this with Artademia itself, Learning Redesigned. As I said, art equals math equals music. I started out with the concept of arts wars, which is really a strategy I learned from Star Wars. And then I decided to go ahead and call this approach geometrics or geometrics, depending on whether you put an A or an E in there. And then I wrote a book called Artademia to explain all of this background. I've also developed a star tuning approach with my friend Jay Lauder. And what's happened is that over the last 30 years since I met him, I've designed guitars. So my first one was actually made 30 years ago. And the one you see on the screen is my recent one I just got last year. I've gone through about a dozen, maybe 15 in the process. So I want to walk you through that and show you just exactly how art equals math equals music. And I will do that in that section. The next section and the next problem area I discovered was Fanartica, language redesigned. Drawing plus writing plus performing is how I've connected these things to that subject matter. I developed star tuning 40 years ago because I wanted kids to learn how to draw at the same time they learn to read and write. My dad taught me how to be a cartoonist at the age of 8. I've been doing it ever since. I got my first job at 19, and I've been a professional commercial artist from that time on. And then again, I started teaching about 23 years ago at the college level. So basically, the whole idea of this is that if you learn to draw at the same time you learn to read and write, actually writing is drawing. It's just that you're drawing symbols for sounds rather than symbols of things that you can see. And I thought it was basically kind of stupid to do that. It's easier to draw things you can see than it is to try and symbolize sounds. As a result of that, it led me into dealing with language and the problems kids had with language, including myself. And I developed a thing called phonetics. I wrote a book about that. And it is based on the concept that there are 7,000 languages in the world. So I've turned those into 7,000 alphabets living in caves. And they have these little sonants and consonants that live with them, that they kind of teach them how to do their bidding. So again, not only am I doing this from a serious point of view, from a serious research, but I've turned the research into what I do best, which is cartooning, and I've combined the two into these courses. The next subject matter was history. So I call that archaeology because basically I've got these little alien archaeologists that run around and look at things on Earth and wonder what the heck happened here. And that's basically done in 3 subject areas. It's archaeology, astronomy, and religion. This gets us into all kinds of mathematical things and interesting things about history before writing. Academia bases history on writing. Academia does not. We base our history on what we can find in ancient arts, architecture, and what they call OOP-arts, which are out-of-place artifacts. I've also added some humor to astronomy and religion with the characters. I have Arthrobots that come from outer space. They're little android robots who flit around. And then I've also done what's called God's Bar and Grill, basically taking the humor and the visuals out of the Bible and showing them, because typically people don't think of that or get involved in that. But I wrote one book about it already, and I'm writing another one, and I'm taking that information from the research on those books and putting them into archaeology. The next subject is psychographics, thinking redesigned, thinking, manipulating, and alienating. This is a fascinating thing to me because, again, I had to go and get my master's degree and all that stuff like most of us have to do when we're in education. And so I studied a lot of philosophers. I created characters called the Philosophers. That's Aristotle up there in the left-hand corner, and Socrates and Plato. And basically, we all live in Mentally, Illinois. We'll get into that more as to why that is. As a teacher, I had to deal with all kinds of learning theories, decide which ones I wanted to use myself. And I've animated, or at least illustrated, most of those. I also did cartoons and caricatures of people I actually knew. Most of the cartoons I've created are based on real people, or at least people that are in books. I mean, I haven't met them all, but Dr. Skunkle here is actually a caricature of the school psychologist who actually asked to be drawn as a skunk. On the right is a spastic man who's actually an old friend of mine who did comedy. He had cerebral palsy and has been on crutches all his life. So he does a lot of humor. And basically his stories are about being alienated by society and so forth. So I developed these alienated characters to deal with not only him, but with the stuff that Dr. Skunkle has dealt with. Basically, you can see that these icons here are an alien, and then the vowels that basically we have to deal with, which I have another set of characters called school days, and then the brain down there, mind, kind of shows how it is we learn things and how it is we learn to think the way we think. Moving on from there, we go to art tech. And art tech is an interesting thing because I've watched all of these changes take place, especially within the arts community. And what I've discovered is, first of all, I love the stories about Tesla, and his whole thing is dealing with energy, frequency, and vibration. I didn't even know what the difference was until I started studying him, and I figured out how that fits together. And he also has this philosophy of these 4 compartments of study called warmth, light, tone, and life. Again, symbolized, those aren't my original symbols, those are somebody else symbolized those, and I thought those were good. But what I've done is I've connected art and math to the music because of STEM. And so I've redesigned STEM to be STEAM, because I noticed that some people have tried to add the art to it, but they clump music into the arts, and I'm not accepting of that. I want them to be 2 different subjects. I created my own logo, my own strategy to do this by adding art and music to math, and you can see that iconized there. I also have a bunch of monkeys, STEM monkeys, one for each of the STEM letters, and they get involved in all kinds of stuff, primarily trying to avoid art and music. So it gives not only a serious take to it, but it also allows me to add some humor. And then the humor comes into Viz Biz, which is something I created for an old friend of mine about 3 years ago. I added some characters to financial situations and did a game, actually a couple of games, to learn financial jargon, really, and business jargon, primarily for myself, because I wasn't aware of it at the time either. And now I've actually created a number of characters, or adapted characters from some of my other areas. So basically what you have here is the working environment. In my case, it's based on a factory that creates things, and in my case it will be a factory of creating artwork and selling it on the street and so forth, which is what I've actually done. And so we have an art factory, we have the Fun Ants farm. We borrowed the ants from the phonetics series and put them into learning business and growing a business. And then I've got my little pumpkins based on a true pup I had for a long time, I loved dearly, and the disruptors. And the disruptors are based on the whole idea of disruption. So they disrupt everything. So we'll get into more and more of that later on in my other presentations. This has just been a brief overview, probably not as brief as I should have made it, but we'll continue on with 6 other presentations, and you can pick their subjects based on what I went through at the very beginning, which was these particular subjects. Hopefully, I would like you to take these ideas and adapt your own arts, your own music, to the same subjects. You don't have to follow mine, you can add your own. But the biggest problem I had was organizing this stuff so that I could present it as a business that made sense and connect the courses. I decided not to do just one course. I've had experience doing entire curriculum, so I just redid the curriculum in shorter spans, shorter courses, and connected them all together in this manner. So that's it for this presentation. I'll continue on with the next one, and they'll all be available online to you. See you next time.